Aloha, everyone. Welcome. The theme for today's class is spring cleaning. We are going to be spring cleaning our cells. And the way that we do that is by shining the light of our consciousness into areas that sometimes we don't pay attention to, and also using some gentle movement to massage into those areas so that we get more fluidity and more ease and the capacity for those tissues to export waste and bring in nourishment. So with that, am I mirrored, Satya? Okay. Place your blocks over to the left. If you want to have a blanket for your knees, place it over to the left and then turn to your right and gently start to make your way onto your back, but be conscious through this, paying attention to the shoulders and the spine. And then as you recline, let yourself be as comfortable as possible. So pay attention to your joints, pay attention to your low back. Notice if your neck feels okay here. Sometimes taking your extra blanket and placing it beneath the shoulders can help if the neck feels tight. So side note, if you sleep on your back, having your pillow lower like this can actually be better for your neck than having it just under your head. I've been doing it recently and it feels really nice. Feel free to try it now. And then when you find a place that's supportive and you can begin to rest, close the eyes if that feels comfortable. Close the mouth if you can breathe through your nose. And just give yourself the opportunity to become still. And see if you can find some relief in this finding of stillness, almost like, In fact, that felt really good. So feel free to take an audible exhale and let it just wash over the whole body. You can do that at any point in class, especially today as we're getting rid of what we don't need and bringing in freshness. We'll take just a few moments in quiet so you can inhabit your body and become aware of your body's weather for the day. And we really can make a difference with shining the light of our awareness throughout the body. Even just bringing your awareness to different areas can transform how those areas support you. It can allow them to release tension. So let's take a moment to scan the whole body, starting at the toes, and try to feel each individual toe. And if you want to add a visualization here, you can imagine a warm golden light filling each toe, maybe even radiating beyond the shape of the body. And then walk your way up through the whole foot. You might even start to feel a little bit of tingling as you shine your awareness now up over the ankle, all the way up the calf and the shin, and then all of the tissues and bones between the knee. Let's spend a little extra time here because so many of us have issues with our knees. Imagine you can almost like sculpt the shape of your knee by bringing your awareness there. Like, oh, okay, there's where the kneecap is. There's the shin bone. There's the thigh bone. I guess shin bones, plural. And the tissues, the ligaments. And it's okay if you're not an anatomy expert. Just try to feel your way through the body. Now up the upper portion of the legs. Remembering the front, the sides, the back, the inside. The hips, let's take a little extra time here. As you do this, you can even imagine like a perfect symmetry in the body, though that doesn't exist for anyone, but you could just plant that seed of the body being perfectly balanced. Now up to the abdomen, core cylinder, our wonderful magical spine, the rib cage, shoulder blades, and then shoulder girdle, including the collarbones, and then down through the arms. Elbows, forearms, wrists, and then the palm of the hand and each finger. Little extra love to the thumb. Our thumbs do so much. Hopefully not too much scrolling, but I feel like your thumbs know it when you're scrolling too much, so we can send them some extra love. And then make your way back up the arms to the neck, and where the neck inserts into the skull, the occiput, the jaw. Can open and close the jaw a couple of times if that helps you. And then make sure to close the mouth once again, but keep a little space between the teeth. The mouth can be closed without having any tension in the jaw muscles. When the tongue rests on the roof of the mouth, that creates the stability so those superficial muscles don't have to work. And the cheekbones and the eye socket, sinuses, the forehead, your brain, and then the skull as a whole. And see if you can be aware of your whole body, from the tips of your toes where we began all the way up to the skull, the crown. And before you begin moving, just imagine in your mind's eye, imagine yourself moving slowly and gently, and feeling so supported. Feeling just as relaxed and supported as you are right now, but also in the space of movement. Can be really simple movements, or maybe there's even a more challenging movement that you would like to be able to do in a more relaxed way, like walking or going up steps, carrying something. Just take a few more moments to visualize that and really try to feel that possibility that you could do that totally free of pain, totally relaxed, yet supported. Right effort. And then let that visualization creep into the body where there's almost like a craving, like, ooh, I want to start to I want to start to move. That sounds fun. If you're following along with the musical playlist, you can hit play on the first track. And then we'll start to actually move. And so bring the hands to the hip bones and ever so gently start to rock the pelvis forward and back. We do this a lot because it's really important to be aware of the orientation of the pelvis and how that impacts the spine. And usually when we think we're neutral, we're not actually neutral. If it's too hard to do with the legs extended, because the legs actually pull on the pelvis and create more of an anterior tilt, you can always bend the knees and place the soles of the feet to the earth instead. Try moving twice as slow. And see if, and with that slower movement, if you can feel the ripple up the spine as the pelvis moves and pulls on the sacrum, the base of the spine, creates that impulse for the rest of the spine to adapt. And you find the place that feels neutral to you, and a couple of clues here is that the back is not pressing, the low back's not pressing and flattening into the earth, but it's also not arcing and reaching away. It's just right there in the middle. Take a few breaths and notice if underneath the fingertips, if they are still on the hip points, if you feel just that little brightening of the soft tissue of the deep core. It's sort of like the sensation of when you cough. So if you're not sure, you can do a little like it's kind of fun, and feel that little brightening underneath the fingertips. As you breathe here with that little bit of brightness, you might notice that there's a little constriction, like the belly can't expand as freely, and that's great in this moment. It's good for the belly to sometimes expand freely, and in this moment it's good for our core and our breath to be dancing with each other. Keeping this neutral, glide one heel in at a time with that effortless movement that you visualized for yourself. Oh, beautiful. I can see it. I can see you're moving effortlessly. Let the feet land. Make any adjustments with the pelvis, and slowly, keeping the pelvis neutral, float the shins to parallel with the earth. And it should feel like your core turns on just a little bit more when you do that. Place the feet down and do this a couple of times just to notice what engages when you lift. Make sure you're not holding the breath. All core work done while holding the breath literally doesn't count. And the next time the legs lift, hold them there. And we're going to very slowly now lower one toe at a time. And then bring it back up, and then use the exhale to lower the other toe. And now on your own, play with this for a few rounds, as relaxed as you can, because when you're working too hard, it means the superficial muscles are working, but when you do it as gently as possible, then it's the deeper muscles doing the work, and that's where the real magic happens. So less truly is more. The next time the right foot comes down, open the arms to T and very slowly start to point the knees to the right. Feel the length between the left hip and the left shoulder. And we'll have a little sequence here with the breath. We'll inhale back up to center, and we'll exhale to switch the legs. And then inhale over to the other side and stay during the exhale. So we get to be in the twist for a full breath. Inhale back to center, and then use the exhale to switch the legs Whenever your next inhale begins, tip the other way. Stay there for the exhale. And then inhale back to center. Exhale to switch. Aloha, Diana. What a treat to see you. Welcome, welcome. Take a few more on your own. And it's okay if you get confused with the breath. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just take your time. I like to use the exhale when the legs are switching so that I can feel the deep core turning on. And Diana, we're just doing some deep core work here. So if it's too many moving parts, you can do your favorite deep core exercise, and then we'll be moving on in just a moment. Take one more to each side. And then release both feet down. Reach the arms towards the heels. Anchor the big toes. And walk the feet in a little bit closer to the hips. Slowly start to reach the knees forward and then a little wider towards the fourth toe, the one next to the pinky, unweighting the pelvis, and then place the hips back down. Take a couple of those pulses on your own. If you want to sync it with the breath, you can try lifting on the exhale. There's no right or wrong. You can try both and see what you like more. And then start to bring your awareness to your spine and really try to feel each of your vertebrae. It doesn't matter how high you lift. It's almost like flossing. You always want to floss between all of your teeth, right? And so let this movement floss between each of your vertebrae. If there's an area that you find where it's hard to articulate a single area, this means we need to do some spring cleaning in this area, right? It means the movement is restricted. Maybe the connective tissue has become a little bit matted, and we can always reverse that. And it takes our consciousness, our breath, and gentle movement. So if you find an area that's a little bit sticky, pause there. Bring all your awareness to that spot, and then bring your breath to the spot. And then gently try to move a little bit above or a little bit below. And be really patient, but also be vigilant, right? Sometimes when it's hard, it's like, oh, I'm good enough, moving on. And say, no, like I want this tissue to be nourished, right? Even if it takes, you can stay here for the whole rest of the class and nourish this one tissue if you need to. Another tool to use here is visualization. So if you're having trouble articulating a certain vertebra, just imagine the vertebra gently lifting, feeling a little space between the next one, and then try it. And we'll just take a few more breaths to floss through the spine. And eventually, when it's time to place the spine down, try to release one vertebra at a time, moving extra slow, making sure you're breathing. Again, holding your breath means none of this movement counts. And eventually, when the pelvis lands, step the feet a little wider and knock the knees in. And let the arms point out a little bit extra just so you have some space through the shoulders. And then let yourself just audible exhale if that feels inviting. And we'll be here for a moment. You can be completely present, or if there's anything that you want to visualize in your body, fluidity in the spine or anything just bubbling up, you're welcome to use this quiet time for that. And start to melt the legs long and sweep the arms high without any tension in the shoulders. Imagine your body is an inflatable raft that's in this kind of funny X shape. And with the next few breaths, imagine the whole raft inflating evenly. So you don't feel it just in the arms, but you feel it through all the cells all at once. And start to lift the right leg, cross it over the left, and let it start to reach and pull you onto your left side, moving really, really nice and slow. And Roseanne, you can stretch your legs out long. That might make it a little easier. If your real estate allows, you can, actually no, let's not go onto the belly just yet, and reach the top arm behind you to start to peel the shoulder blade back down the spine, and pelvis follows, so you land back in that inflated X. And then we'll switch sides. So now the left leg lifts, crosses, left leg pulls on the hip, slow motion. Maybe you can even feel one vertebra at a time here. Play with it. And eventually you'll make it onto the right side. And the left arm will reach up and back to reverse that motion. So you can feel that little tug of war as the right arm pulls and the shoulder lands and the body returns onto the back. Now I want to give you a few moments to explore this on your own, both sides. So take your time. But maybe there was one part of that movement that felt the most interesting, the pulling of the leg. It's very strengthening for the legs, hips, and core. The pulling of the arm does the same for the upper body. Sometimes I like to stay on my side and have a little tug of war where it goes back and forth between the arm and the leg. Bonus, the bottom side of the body is getting a massage here. I'm still on the first side, so no need to rush if you're enjoying that. And then eventually you can always pause in the middle and then start exploring the other side. And we had that visualization at the beginning of class of the golden light flooding the whole body. Maybe you can still see that or feel that as the leg pulls. Maybe the whole leg fills with that golden light of awareness, and it goes all the way up to the torso and the arm. Make your way onto your back. We'll cross the right leg over one last time just so we can roll onto our belly. So it doesn't need to be dramatic. We're just going to meet on our belly and we'll do a little awkward wiggle. Actually, no, maybe it doesn't have to be awkward. Maybe it can be nice and smooth as you come back onto your mat and prop yourself up on your forearms. Shift the weight from shoulder to shoulder. And it's okay if you want to tilt a little so you can see the screen better and be at a slight angle. That's totally fine. Start to circle the shoulders around the elbows. And try to visualize your rib cage moving through space. And as you draw the back of the circle, try to feel how the rib cage interacts with your shoulder blades. Try to feel that possibility of the ribs lifting into the shoulders, so there's a lot of strength in the arms, this integrated strength. Move nice and slow, and even though this is strengthening, feel any sense of massage, between shoulder blades and rib cage. Maybe even a little internal massage of the shoulders themselves. We'll start to circle the other way. And without changing a thing, look down at the hands and just notice how soft they are. I know they're soft because you weren't micromanaging them, because we weren't thinking about them. And this is actually how we want to use the hands when we come up to tabletop in a moment, with this nice dome like you're palming a basketball. Center your weight through your shoulders. Start to push the elbows down into the earth and drag them back towards the legs so the spine traction's long. Gaze down so the back of the neck is nice and long, and take a couple of breaths in Sphinx pose. As you breathe, try to feel how the backside of the rib cage expands all the way down to the low back. And then stack the hands, elbows wide, forehead to the hands. Let the arms relax. Notice any fatigue in the triceps. That's totally normal. Let that just melt away. And then take a moment to find your level pelvis. I find that it's a little bit harder here because you can't feel the sacrum touching the ground like we did while we were on our back. But I know you're all up for the challenge. When you find your neutral pelvis, it might feel like the quads are ever so gently engaging and pushing down into the earth, not because you told them to, but because they naturally fired to help the pelvis neutralize. From here, start to reach the left foot straight back and let it naturally lift and peel the thigh off the mat. Feel the muscles on the back of the left hip that are engaging to lift the left leg, and then set it back down. Take a few on this first side. Less is more, just like our inflatable raft in that X pose. Imagine the leg just inflating and filling and reaching out evenly, so you even feel it on the front of the leg, the muscles that are eccentrically contracting, maybe even the inner thigh and pelvic floor. And then switch legs. Though we're using our whole body here, really, you might notice the glutes brightening, the big powerful muscles that are behind the hip. Sometimes we have an asymmetry in these muscles, so one leg might not lift as high, or it might feel a little harder, and that's just fine, but it's always useful to pay attention, learn about the body. You don't have to change anything or write it down, but it's just so the body learns and adapts. And then set that leg down and let everything relax, and we'll just take a few breaths here. The diaphragm strengthens as we breathe, and the belly pushes down into the earth. See if you can even visualize the diaphragm, that dome muscle at the base of the rib cage. You feel the belly pressing, but it really bisects the whole body between the rib cage and the rest of the organs. So maybe you can feel the back of the rib cage gently lifting as you inhale. Maybe you can feel the diaphragm pressing down into the organs. The diaphragm doesn't have as many nerves as other areas in the body, so it's actually normal that you can't really feel it without a lot of focus and awareness of the muscles and tissues around it. Start to bring those nice soft hands that you observed in in Sphinx underneath the shoulders. Keep them soft. Push into them to slowly come up to tabletop, and then drag them in so they're underneath the shoulders. And start to paw out the hands, shifting the weight from hand to hand. You want extra weight in the pinky side of the hand, and then the knuckle of the index finger will lift. Right? So the hands are soft. They're almost like they've got arches, like your feet have arches. And start to point the fingers in a little bit, or maybe more. We're going to stay here for some time, bringing awareness to the areas in the hand and the wrist and the forearm that we don't pay a lot of attention to. And so as you paw from hand to hand, change the angle of the fingers. And first we're going in, we'll eventually go out, and we'll spend a generous amount of time. So explore on your own. There should never be pain, so if you go too far and it feels like kind of tight and uncomfortable, you don't have to push it, but find that curiosity, or maybe there's a way to support yourself in that position that was first awkward, but then your body can adapt. And if it helps, you can close your eyes, right? Because it doesn't actually matter what direction the fingers are pointed, but just try to bring the light of your inner awareness down to the fingertips, down to the palms, down to the wrists and the forearms, and imagine that golden energy flooding the hands. If you need to take a break at any time in this whole class, please always listen to those cravings in the body, because really our body is so much smarter than our mind when it comes to movement and support. And let's just take a couple more breaths. I'm finding my way back to center, but you don't have to. And let's take a little break by allowing the hips to melt back to the heels. If it's comfortable, palms can come face up here, and let the hands be really, really relaxed. Forehead touches the earth, or you can place a block underneath the forehead. If this is not a restful, comfortable pose, please come into a restful, comfortable pose. And let's breathe through the back of the body, and just notice we've spent a lot of time articulating the vertebra of the spine, paying attention to the rib cage, to the shoulder blades, to the low back and the glutes. Just notice if it's more possible for you to feel and visualize and have awareness of that whole back body. And then float back up to all fours. Start to crawl forward towards your blocks. Grab them. Hold them with each hand, and then crawl backwards so that you're back in the middle of the mat, but then you have your blocks and you got to crawl. So many benefits. And then let's do medium height with the blocks. Start to, before you move, we're going to be doing some cat and cowing, but instead of originating the movement at the pelvis, just for funsies, we're going to start at the head. Don't overdo it with the neck. You don't want to feel any strain here. I just want you to break up crystallization of how you always do cat and cow. So gently start to lengthen through the back of the neck. Let that initiate the movement of the rounding of the spine, tracing up one vertebra at a time. Feeling the deep abdominals starting to hug in and up through the front of the spine, and then the last thing that happens is the pelvis rocks back. And then for the opposite, reach the crown of the head forward and start to lengthen it up towards the sky, and feel that ripple travel down between the shoulders, mid back, low back, and then the last thing that happens is the tailbone lifts. Take a few of these if you want to sync it with the breath. There's benefits to inhaling and exhaling in either pose, so it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever feels most natural, or you can do what feels new and exciting. One breath per movement, or several breaths is just fine if you're moving really slow. And just like when we were on our back, notice if there's an area where you're like, ooh, I have no awareness here. Like maybe it goes from between your shoulders down to like the sacrum. Try to move a little slower. Take your time. Visualize the fluid movement. You have the muscles to do it and you have the strength to do it. It often is just almost like an amnesia, like, oh, we've forgotten how to fire those muscles. And visualization can really help with the remembering. The next time you're in cat pose, that's the rounded spine, pause there, come on to the fingertips and start to shift the hips back a little bit, creating a little extra tension through the back of the body, good tension, right? Use this to slowly start to drop the sits bones and roll up one vertebra at a time with a lot of support. You always want to feel support on the front of the spine when you're rolling up so that you're not putting any unnecessary pressure on the discs. If you have arthritis or that doesn't feel good, then you don't have to roll up in that way. Relax the arms down and start to circle the left arm up and back, nice and slow. Oh, yeah, that's funny. I said arm, I meant shoulder, but let's do the arm. It's time for some big and wild movements, but still move very slowly and consciously. So let's fine-tune this a little bit. Release the arm down. Find level with the pelvis. Bring your left hand to your right rib cage. So that you have awareness of what your rib cage is doing. Reach the right arm forward, and as it reaches, let the shoulder blade slide wide on the back. And then slowly start to circle the arm up. Let the shoulder blade slide up so you feel it gliding upward on the rib cage, and then flip the palm away from you and start to reach the arm back and let the shoulder blade draw back down onto the rib cage. And then we'll reverse that circle. So thumb up, the shoulder blade starts to lift. Once you get to the top, reach up, let the shoulder blade glide up, and then reach forward, let the shoulder blade glide wide. Take a few on your own, and really the shoulder blade is just following where the arm is reaching. When you get to the top of the circle, flip the palm away, and it's going to create a little bit more circling here. We'll do one more. And then we'll go the other way. So actually before we do that, bring the hips down to the heels, relax the arms into the lap, and just feel the left side or the right side of the body, the right shoulder, maybe even the right neck, the right ear, wherever you're feeling something or just feeling space. And then we'll do the second side. So float back up, bring the right fingers around the rib cage. We're trying to stay neutral, so unmoving in the pelvis and the rib cage. Reach the left fingertips forward, and as the left arm reaches, almost like someone's like pulling on your arm, feel the shoulder blade protract, so wrapping wide, and then start to reach the arm up, and the shoulder blade glides up. Flip the palm away, and as the arm reaches back and down, let the shoulder blade squeeze onto the rib cage, and then reverse that action. Wherever the arm is reaching, the shoulder blade follows, but the rib cage stays anchored, right? So you're actually doing some spring cleaning between the shoulder blade and the rib cage here. Little secret, we're starting to get ready for our rise training, which is our upper body training, and I was just doing these today for fun, and I was not warmed up at all, hadn't done any physical exertion, and just doing this, I wanted to do a handstand, and it was like the best handstand that I've done in a long time. So even though it feels like not a lot is happening, just having awareness and space here is huge. The next time the arm circles forward, bring both hands to your pelvis. Make sure pelvis is neutral. We're going to keep our body in a straight line and just increase the bend in your knees so you tilt back. This is going to fire the psoas. Inhale, float up. Exhale for that little lean back. Take a few on your own. If you're new to this movement, less is more. You might feel just that little brightening underneath the palms or the fingertips. The psoas is really deep, so you're not actually feeling the psoas, but the tissues around it. And you don't want to feel any pressure in the low back. Rather, you want to feel a lot of length and stability. The next time you float forward, pause there, shift the weight into the right knee and step the left foot out for a 90-90 lunge. Bring your blocks to your highest height and we'll do some flossing in the left foot. So anchor the left big toe, plug the left heel down into the ground, and when you do that, you should feel some muscles engaging in the back of the left leg, maybe even the same ones that lifted the leg in our Shalabhasana earlier. Start to circle the knee around the ankle. You do not want to feel any pressure in the knee here, so the circles might be small. I'll go 3/4 just so you can see what I'm doing, and if you want to go 3/4, you can too. And with the big toe anchored, notice how depending on where the knee is, the arch of the foot changes and adapts. Maybe it lifts a little, maybe it levels a little. Keeping the heel plugged in means it's safe for the knee to come far past the ankle as long as there's no pressure in the knee. So start to play with that. That's going to take the ankle into dorsiflexion. A lot of times from wearing shoes and walking around on flat surfaces, our ankle mobility gets really limited. So this is a really important spring cleaning to do. And now continue to keep the big toe down, but allow the hips to get involved. So just drawing some circles with the hips. Let the hips be nice and relaxed. Let the movement be fluid. The spine can gently follow the movement of the hips. And then shift the, tuck the right toes under, shift the weight into the right hand, and start to reach the left hand forward, up and back, just like we practiced in kneeling. So those nice shoulder rotations, but this time you can let the rib cage follow. Right before the rib cage was fixed, now as the arm reaches, the rib cage follows, and start to notice as you reach up and back what is happening in the front of the right hip. Try to feel this action through your whole body. If it feels comfortable, you can start to lift the back knee and extend, reach through the back heel to make it a more full body movement. But if that doesn't feel good, just keep the knee down. The next time the left hand reaches up, pause there for a few breaths. Gently draw inner thighs together and see if that helps you lengthen through the spine as you rotate a little bit more to the left. Breathe. Release the lifted hand to the blocks. Turn all 10 toes to the side so you're in a straddle and walk your blocks over towards your right foot. Bend into your right knee, but keep equal weight in both feet and just gently rock forward and back. Subtly traction the legs towards one another without building tension, just building a brightness through the inner thighs, pelvic floor, and spine. If you're doing it right, it should feel like when you move the legs together, you can lengthen the spine. And then with the hands on the blocks, let's play with some of those cat-cows, starting at the head, creating space all the way along the spine. And remember, if there's an area where you can't feel the articulation. Pause there, breathe, visualize it, take your time, right? This is sort of like the junk drawer, the thing you open and you're like, ooh, I don't really want to deal with that one. But how good does it feel when you actually take the time to create space and get rid of what you don't need? Pause, find a neutral spine, and start to walk the blocks over to the right, turning all 10 toes, and then stepping back, lowering the knees, placing the blocks at any height, taking a break in Bhaktasana or any rest pose that feels good for you. And then we'll float up to kneeling, shift the weight into the left knee, and step the right foot forward for our 90-90 lunge on the second side. Bring the blocks to the highest height. Anchor the right big toe, and we'll start to floss through the retinaculum, the band of connective tissue around the right ankle that processes every step that we take to bring more balance into the knee, into the hip, into the low back. Let the circles be any size that feels comfortable. We don't want the movement, we don't want any rotation coming from the knee. So all of the articulation is actually coming from the ankle, and the movement of the knee is forcing the ankle to adapt. So you can imagine this is very helpful if we were going to climb a mountain or even just walk on some uneven gravel. Our ankle goes at all these different angles, and we don't want our knee to take the pressure, right? We want our very smart ankle to do the work. And then we'll add on our arm circles. So shift the weight into the left hand, tuck the left toes under, start to reach the right arm forward, up and back. And remember, this time the rib cage follows. So unlike they're called cars when we were just moving the arm, let the whole body work together. Be aware of both legs and how both legs can support your pelvis here. And then when you're ready, eventually lift that left knee and reach out through the left heel. But again, be aware of both legs working together to support the pelvis. And the next time the arm lifts, pause there, take a couple of breaths, traction the feet together, and see if you can use that strength to lengthen the spine and spiral a little bit more. And then circle the arm down, let it land on the block, walk the blocks over to the left, bend the left knee, the feet are in a straddle, so the outer edges of the feet are parallel, and then just gently rock forward and back. And if you're feeling a lot of stretch in the right groin muscle, try to traction the feet together and lengthen through the spine so it becomes more about how the legs are connected and less pushing into the right hip to stretch the right leg. You want to feel space, almost like you're a big suction cup and the legs are the edges of the suction cup. And there's that sense of lift and buoyancy all the way up the inner leg lines to the pelvic floor. And then as you're ready, you can play with a little bit of cat and cow. You might need to bend both knees a little bit more so it doesn't feel like you're straining at all. Equal weight in both feet. And then start to heel toe the feet together. Bend the knees really deeply and take a couple of cat and cow in this uttanasana, standing forward bend. The next time you're in cat, anchor the big toes, plug the heels in. You might need to bend the knees a little bit more, and then slowly start to press the pelvis forward, rolling up one vertebra at a time. And we've taken a lot of time to build awareness of the spine, so take this one vertebra at a time thing seriously. Sometimes it's helpful to only come up as you're inhaling and then pause, exhale. And then continue on the inhale. Wow, amazing job. Kirtana is pretty new to this style of yoga, and they just arose at the top, so good job, Kirtana. Incredible. Start to paw out your feet, and then slowly come to stillness wherever is comfortable with the feet underneath the hips, and take inventory of your body. The soles of the feet, the ankles, all the way up. You know the pathway. Notice any sense of spaciousness. And then flatten your 2 blocks to the lowest height. Step your right foot onto the right block. And just so you can see, it should feel really natural, like you're almost in Tadasana, but maybe there's that slight tilt forward. Keep your left leg, hip, and shoulder in a straight line, just like we did in that earlier exercise, and just bend the right knee. And then kick into the right foot to come back into that sort of modified Tadasana. Bend the knee, and now start to let the left arm swing a little bit, and then kick into the leg to come back to neutral. Both legs are plugged into the earth. Play with this little bounce here. Give yourself permission to adjust where the left leg is. Start to feel any sense of buoyancy and support, and use the strength that you're awakening to lengthen the spine. So it's not just in the legs. And Roseanne, the back foot stays down, and you're just bending the front knee and letting the hip flex. Yes, there you go. The next time you bend into the front knee, slowly start to shift the weight forward and let the left knee hover just a little bit, or if that's not comfortable, you can let it extend. Take a breath here. And then start to swing the left leg, but keep the pelvis neutral. So again, I'm going to turn to the side. The pelvis isn't rocking a whole lot. It might tip a little bit, but we're doing some flossing through that left hip. And the arm can swing against it, just like if you were going for a very vigorous walk. And the next time the leg swings back, place the foot down, look at it. It should be mostly forward, and then the toes might turn out slightly. We'll take a modified Virabhadrasana 1, gently bend into the front knee. Exhale to float the arms to the horizon. Feel any sense of strength at your core. And then bend a little more into the front knee and start to push down into the left heel to let the whole left side of the body open. Take a breath here. And then shift the weight back into the left foot. Place the right foot down and pause and just take a little inventory. And then shift the weight into the right foot. Step the left foot up on the block. Same thing. Let's actually start by straightening the legs so you can feel strong Tadasana. And then gently start to bend the knee. The left hip will crease a little bit and start to shift the weight towards that left foot. Let the right arm swing and then kick into the left leg, and the left arm lengthens forward. Once you got the hang of it, you can start to bounce here. And this should feel comfortable and supported in the joints. So if there's pressure in the ankle or the knee or the hip, try moving a little slower. Try walking the back foot in a little bit. And this actually trains us for steps or climbing a mountain. Try to feel the whole back line of support all the way up the plantar fascia, calves, hamstrings, erectors, back of the neck. This is more to feel stability. So feel what's connecting you here. And the next time you step forward, slowly shift the weight. Let the right knee lift, or if that's not comfortable, the right leg can just hang. Find your drishti, your steady gaze. And then as you're comfortable, you can let the legs start to swing. And you're working to stabilize the pelvis here, right? So just because you could kick further, that would take the hip into extension. And we're just not trying to anterior tilt the hip as we do this. And then the next time the leg swings back, step the toes down, let the heel lower. You can look at the foot to make sure you've got a Virabhadrasana 1-like setup. And then bend the knee a little bit, extra or equal weight in both feet. Exhale, arms to the horizon. Feel any brightness. And then bend the knee a little bit more as you press into the back heel and let the whole back leg expand, the whole back hip, and then evenly through both sides on the spine. Take a couple of breaths at the top. You can gaze wherever is natural as the spine extends. And then slowly straighten the front leg so the weight shifts back into the right leg. Glide the front foot back and pause in Tadasana. And just go for a little walk around your space and give yourself permission to let your arms swing. Let your notice any spaciousness in the hip. If you go for a walk later today, notice how you feel on a real walk. And see if you can be aware of your whole body right now. And that smoothness and evenness and lightness that we've been visualizing. Let it come to fruition as you move. Let's start to make our way back to our mats. Step the feet a little bit wider than the hips. Anchor the big toes, rock forward and back, keeping the toes anchored, and then start to bend the knees a little bit. And lengthen up through the spine, sweep the arms up, and then bend the knees really deeply, melting the spine over the legs. If you want to use your blocks here, you can. If you want to widen the feet a little bit, you can, as long as you can feel how they connect at the center. Gently start to rock forward and back, and then circle the hips. So imagine there's like a circle on the earth below you, and you're just tracing the shape of that circle. And then go the opposite direction and just notice the sensations through the hip socket. Let the low back be pliable and accommodating. And then slowly lower one knee at a time. Let the hips lower to the heels. If this isn't comfortable, you can sit on your block instead. And let yourself come to stillness. Notice what it feels like to be in your body. Notice any ease or lightness. And then dig a little deeper. Breathe into the heart. And just notice if that pathway is easier to walk after the work that you've done, bringing consciousness and love to the whole body. We'll finish with one last exercise that I've been doing a lot for my own body, and then Shavasana and meditation. So before we come onto the back, if you want to dim your lights, grab any nice sweaters or props that you like to have for Shavasana and make sure they're nearby. If you want to put socks on, any of that, you're welcome to. And then if you do have an extra blanket nearby, you can roll it up so it'll be there for you in Shavasana in a moment, and just place it in a convenient position. And then turn to the right and slowly make your way onto your back. And we'll be meeting in our bridge setup. And so if you haven't already, you can walk the heels in. And I notice a lot of times people's feet are a little far forward, so just pay attention to where your feet are and make sure that your knees feel supported when we lift up into bridge. Reach the hands down towards the heels and very, very, very gently initiate that pelvic tilt where the low back lengthens and the sits bones are basically lifted by your hamstring. So a posterior pelvic tilt. Imagine there's just like a marble underneath the sacrum. Start to roll the marble from side to side. Feel the soft tissue of the back grazing the blanket. And right now we're massaging our very lowest vertebra, the sacrum and maybe the bottom lumbar vertebra. I'm noticing that I want my feet a little wider to give me space for the lateral movement, so feel free to try that. And now letting a couple more vertebra lift. So we're still very close to the ground, but now the marble is just a little bit higher up on the back. Same thing. Start to roll it from side to side. And we're going to go all the way up the spine like this. And I want you to have the freedom to do it at your own pace, especially if you find an area, maybe that sticky spot where it was hard to lift the spine before. You can spend extra time. And so you just imagine rolling up one more vertebra so that the marble is up one vertebra higher, and then you roll it from side to side. We don't want any pain anywhere in the body, but pay particular attention to the knees. They can get a little cranky sometimes with the lateral movement if the big toes don't stay down and the adductors aren't supporting them. Pay attention to the sensations in the spine, right? We want this to be like melty, ooey gooey. There is quite a lot of core strength here, but we don't want to have any tension. So if you feel like you can't move fluidly, maybe take a little bit of a break and then try moving a little slower. And truth be told, when I do this, I do it for like a while. It's like a self-massage technique, but if you've had enough, you can enter Shavasana at any time. So this is your exploration. And then no need to rush, but when you eventually have explored the spine, can melt it back down. And grab your blanket and place it underneath the apex of the knees. You don't want it too far up because that'll put a little bit of pressure in the front of the hip socket. And then We don't want to be doing any work in Shavasana, so it's okay however things land. The core is not going to be on, but take a moment to find neutral and then release all the work. So it's almost like we're not going to maintain neutral as we rest, right? But find it and then release. Release all effort. Close the eyes if it feels comfortable. And in the beginning of class, we walked our awareness through the whole body. In this moment, notice if it's easier to feel your physical form. And start to feel the breath. And the next layer of our being is actually the mind. It's even subtler than the breath. And just notice the state of the mind. And even if it's telling you stories that you don't like, just your ability to notice it is a huge triumph. So no judgment. Try to feel that space of observation. And the next layer beyond the mind is the heart. Let your the part of you that can observe, watch the heart. Feel the core of the heart. Just imagine that golden consciousness radiating out of the heart and filling the whole body, cleansing the whole body, nourishing the whole body, literally shining light into the areas we've forgotten, the areas that need some extra attention and love. And let yourself be relaxed and just know that the radiance of your heart is doing this work without you needing to visualize it or make it happen. And so now let yourself just release completely and be nourished by the light of your inner awareness. And bonus points if you can just keep observing, not doing, but also not going unconscious. Just being in this space of observation. And though I love sleep, I love it so much, being in this conscious rest is so much more beneficial. Let yourself be in that observer space, feeling the unity of the body, the smoothness of the breath without any doership, the calmness of the mind, and the vastness of the heart. And let yourself be relaxed. And take your time starting to wake up the body in a kind and gentle, even enjoyable way, delighting in the freedom that you've discovered through your consciousness. And eventually you can make your way up to seated, but try to enjoy that process too. Watching the layers of body, breath, mind, and heart working together, enhancing one another. And when you eventually have made it up to seated, make yourself as comfortable as possible. Take as much time as you need. Use as many props as you need to find a pain-free way to sit. And I know I sat the same way for many, many, many years. And I benefit now so much from changing and adapting and listening. And so assume that your seat right now will be different than any way you've ever sat. Give yourself that freedom to find it for the first time. And eventually let yourself bask in a supported stillness. And though I'm not inside each of your experiences, I feel pretty confident, based on how my body feels after that class, that you may be experiencing some new awareness, a deeper sense of support, of consciousness, freedom, not just in the body, but in these other koshas or layers of our being. And so we'll use the last several minutes of our class to consciously marinate in the state that you've revealed. And you truly are pure consciousness. You don't have to do anything besides relax into that place inside the heart. And the deeper we go into the heart, the more our consciousness takes over and floods our experience. And so if that visualization of the golden light radiating from the heart has been useful to you, you can imagine with each inhale that that golden light can expand, and with each exhale it stays expanded, but it grows brighter and brighter as you exhale. And you can attach any mantra that you've been working with lately to this visualization. And we'll close with just a couple rounds of the tension release practice. And if you know it, you can do it on your own. And if not, you can follow along with me. Imagine any debris from our cleaning, physical, mental, emotional, energetic. Imagine it all accumulating at the heart center. And you can release the hands down by the sides. This will be the pathway through which the debris leaves the body. You can even trace that pathway if you want. It will exit out of the palms and the fingertips. And so start to draw in a cleansing breath. Let it wash into the heart where it mixes with that debris. Retain the breath for a few moments as long as there's no strain. And then exhale the mixture. Let it leave the body through the arms out of the central channel of the palms and fingertips. Each breath washes into the heart. We suspend the breath at the heart, letting it mix. And then exhale, let the floodgates open, just pour out of the arms. Next time the breath is suspended at the heart, you can repeat Rudy's mantra, I deeply wish to release all negative psychic tension, and let the floodgates open. And just take one or two more on your own. And then after your next exhale, start to flick out the fingertips, shake the arms, and imagine all of that tension completely dissipating. Thank you so much. It was wonderful practicing with you. I have to admit, our Vinyasa flow training is wrapping up, and I am so overjoyed that I can just do whatever I want and not have to worry about fancy sequencing, and we can just melt all our tension away and bathe in the light of the inner self. So I had a lot of fun with class today. I hope it felt amazing. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stick around. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day. Or night. It did get dark in some of those rooms.